Delighted on this episode of Words, Images, and Worlds to be talking with someone you've probably seen on your television, storyteller, author, actor, William B. Davis. Mr. Davis, thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
A pleasure, absolutely a pleasure. People out there will know you for the variety of work that you've done in film and television, but you're also the author of two memoirs, if I'm counting correctly at this point. One of those being an acting and memoir combination on acting and life, and Where There's Smoke, Musings of a Cigarette Smoking Man. So delighted to be talking about the written word and your connections to storytelling.
Happy to do that as best we
Yeah.
can.
In both of your books, you travel back and you go into some of your beginnings and origins, but I'm curious about what connected you with storytelling, what connected you with the written word, and especially thinking about your work as an author.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of answer that question because, um, no, maybe it isn't so hard. I mean, I've written various things. I've also written some short films. I've written a TV series, so I have been a writer in some aspects of my life, but the books we're actually looking at on acting and life, which is the most recent, and Where There's Smoke, are in a way more interesting. I don't know if I call them story. Well, they tell my story, I suppose. I mean,
Hmm.
telling that story, which is actually quite a remarkable story when you actually put it all together and you go back to where I began and where I've ended up and what I went through to get there. So it's been remarkable in that regard. Um, so writing has always come comfortably to me. I enjoy the process. Um, One of the things I stress to my actors and my acting students and whatever is specificity. That what you need to do as an actor, you need to find out why I specifically say these words at this time. Not some other words that I'd feel like saying, but these words. What's important to those words? And so as a writer on the other side of that, I'm always looking for how to most clearly express what I want to say. Easy to just kind of rough it out. And what was fun for me, I was curious. I didn't even realize after when I started my first memoir, Where There's Smoke, which is more of a memoir than the second one, which is a bit more of a book on the subject of and about acting. Um,
Hmm.
but that most of these celebrities who have these biographies out there, these memoirs, they didn't write them. Somebody else wrote them. I mean, I read Christopher Plummer's, for instance, and I mean, it's astonishing the number of places where it's written in quotation marks of things that happened 40, 50 years ago. I mean, unless he wrote them down at the time, how could he possibly know that this is exactly what was said by this person at this time? It was just made up. Uh, and I didn't want to make up. I wanted to tell my story. I wanted to put it out there, and that's it's such an experience to do. I mean, to go back in time. I mean, especially with the first one, it forced me to contact people that I hadn't talked to for 50 years and see where we both come from and reconnect to our past. And I continue to do this in some ways because I recently did an episode of a series called Murder in a Small Town. And the leading actor in that is Rossif Sutherland. Who is Rossif Sutherland? I didn't know. He's Donald Sutherland's son, the one none of us heard of, the youngest, the most recent. Um, and we bonded very quickly because we bonded around Donald, who he was very engrossed with Donald's later years and whatever, because he was the eldest or the youngest son. Whereas I knew Donald when he was just starting, when he was a questionable talent at the beginning, and so we shared a lot of stories from one end of our lives to the other. Mm.
Sounds like there's a lot of research, a lot of process and time that's gone into the work that you've done.
Yes, absolutely, and that's a lot of the fun of it. I mean, is trying to understand your own life as well as to spread it, put it out there. I mean, because I mean, time has passed, but I mean, I would say, I don't know, I guess a boy wonder in a way, because I was running a professional theater company when I was too young to be on the board of directors. My father had to be the person on the board of directors, even though he didn't do anything. But you had to be 21, and I was only 19, I think. I was 20. Um, and then I was working in England and in the theater. I was an assistant director at the National with Laurence Olivier, and I worked with Albert Finney and Maggie Smith when they were young stars, and um, and I worked in British Rep when it existed, um, and also for Canadians. I mean, the my start in the Canadian world of theater. I mean, I started as a child actor, and in Canada in the 40s, that meant radio. We didn't have
Mm-hmm.
television. We had very little theater. We did have some theater, but we had no television. And when I was working on radio, the television building was going up across the road, this big yellow structure. And these radio actors who made a living for 20, 30 years doing radio, some of them were excited with possibility of television. Some of them were terrified, that it was going to take away what their way of life in a way.
Amazing how your life has been adjacent to the theater and then fully on in the theater with growing up across from that building. You mentioned in your work having a rehearsal space in the basement and things of that nature. So it sounds like this is something that's really grown along with you as you've gone through the stages of life.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah, I mean, my cousins, I mean, that's kind of how I started. My cousins, who were a half generation older than I was, ran a summer theater company, and they rehearsed in Toronto in our basement. And so I was around actors, I was watching actors, and then suddenly they needed a 12-year-old boy who was convenient. Bill Davis, come here. And that began this whole journey. And they later went to my other brother, Rolf, and he became a scientist. So it doesn't necessarily follow that because you did some acting when you were a child, you became an actor, director, teacher, writer, and all those things that I've done. But
How has being in the theater and being in film informed your writing craft? How has that kind of grown in alignment?
that's an interesting question, which, to be honest, I haven't really thought about because I always think of it the other way around. Yeah, structurally, my book on acting and life was copied from Stephen King's book on writing, just
It's a
as a
great
story.
one. It's a great
Yeah,
one to copy.
a wonderful book. But it intrigued me because the first half of the book was about his career as a writer, how he became a writer, how he learned to be a writer. And the second half was how to write a book, how to write. This was
Mhm.
kind of a how-to of writing. And so the first half of my on acting and life is my history as an actor, basically, and a director of actors, a teacher of actors, but as a working professional and what I was exposed to, what I learned, what I thought, what I dislearned, what I threw away, et cetera, et cetera. And the second half is more cogently presented as to what does an actor do, or what do I think an actor should do, maybe even more to the point. And hopefully interesting for anyone who's interested in acting in some form or other, and we all are, we watch actors all the time. Everybody's a specialist. You hear people on the street saying, "Oh, I don't think he's a very good actor. Oh, I think he's terrific." But
Mhm.
so everybody has an idea about acting, and then of course there's the professionals who want to do it and want to know more about doing it and want to study the craft. Yeah.
I'm an educator when I'm not podcasting, so our professions have that in common. Everyone
Yeah.
feels they are qualified to speak on what makes a good person in our roles, it sounds like. I'm curious about on writing. It's one of my favorite books to look at for writing craft, and thinking especially about that section where you're exploring your life. And the question that I drew out of that is, what are some of the things that you keep in mind? We've talked about writing craft, but as you think about crafting a meaningful life, what are some of the things that have come up as being important to you with someone who has a lot of varied experiences?
Wow. Um, Funnily, I think um, crafting a life is not a realistic goal.
Mm.
Um, um, you're bound to be disappointed. I mean, if you decide this is how you want your life to go, um, you yes, I mean, where my life was supposed to go, I was supposed to be a artistic director of the Stratford Festival Theatre in Canada when I was 29. And I ended up as artistic director of the National Theatre School of Canada at 28. So I was in the ballpark, but I was in a different part of the stadium completely. But so much of my life has been what comes next? What opportunity is presented? A lot of my life has been teaching. Um, and I suppose I hark back to when I was in high school and the high school teacher said, I think Bill would be a good teacher. He has a way of explaining things. Remember, she used these uh, gestures and so on to demonstrate how well I taught or would teach if I was a teacher. Did that have an effect? I don't know. Um, but she was right. I am empathetically and analytically a good teacher because one has to combine the empathy with the student and the analytical sense of the subject. So,
Mm.
but in terms of crafting my life, I mean, I guess one does moment to moment. I mean, one sees one's in a situation that one could take in different directions. I mean, the biggest one for me, I think, was when I was in London and I was working for the National Theatre School, National Theatre of Great Britain. I was supposed to be the assistant to Albert Finney when he directed his first movie. That was all laid out. We were both working at the National at the time, and after that, we were going to do this movie. And then the National Theatre School of Canada phoned me seemingly out of the blue and said, did I want to come to Canada and be the assistant artistic director of the National Theatre School of Canada? And I had to decide in 2 weeks.
Mm.
And I think 3 weeks later, I was in Canada. Um, was that the right decision? Who will ever know? But it was a big decision, and it took me in a quite a different direction than if I'd stayed in England as a director, as a working theater director. But
Sounds like improvisation is part of life and part of acting as well.
absolutely.
You mentioned writing informing your film craft, and I'm curious, as you're preparing a role, is writing part of that process as well? Are you the kind of person who sort of embodies a role through crafting a backstory and writing things down in that way?
Well, you do. I mean, yes, you work very closely with the writer when you're an actor. Um, One of the things that a lot of people stress, a lot of acting teachers stress, is the importance of working with the story. that the writer has been writing. I actually don't encourage that. What I encourage is finding why you have to do what the author says you do, when the author says you do it, and precisely the way the author wants you to do it. And when you do that, you develop the backstory, you develop the circumstances, you develop. I should make one thing clear. Um, you're not playing a character. You're being yourself in the imagined situation.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's what makes me do this? What would make me kill a king? Not what would make me play a character with a funny mustache who kills kings, but what would make me do it? So that opens up all the line of questioning of backstory and how you're different and whatever. And that puts you in action. When the other actor does their work and puts them in action, then you collide. And the collision creates the story. But if I try to demonstrate the story, then I back off from the collision and do it all by myself instead of letting it come out of the conflict between the characters. And that's the intention. Always you have other things in your mind from time to time. Um, I mean, I remember doing a television series with an older actor who had, I think she had to kill her daughter. I can't remember what it was, something like that. And she insisted that my character wouldn't do that. Oh, I see. So but that's the story. You have to do that. I mean, it's like, so I'm cast as Macbeth, and I say, I don't think I would kill Duncan. No, I don't think I'd kill him. No. So then you have to go and play Hamlet.
That's right. That's right. You make up your mind. Let us know when you're ready.
Yes, right, exactly.
Yeah. No, I'm a person who loves story, and as I mentioned, I'm a teacher, so there's a little bit of theatrics that comes into that. So I'm
Yeah,
curious
yeah.
about what you would say about kind of the enduring power of writing, maybe how it's been powerful for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I say that story doesn't isn't important to the actor in a sense, obviously story is what makes us want to do it. It's
Hmm.
because the writer is telling us a story one way or another that is impactful for us. And so, for in my profession, I mean, certain authors are more compelling, obviously, than others. And I mean, I'm a great fan of both Chekhov and Shakespeare. I mean, they're very different, but they both command one's involvement. And, yeah, I wonder, I mean, there's so many plays that I've done and some films and television, but more plays, more theater that has impacted me from storytellers. I think of Tennessee Williams and Arthur Miller and that whole era of the American theater. Um, we still go back to some of them and want to explore them again. I mean, I just reread A Streetcar Named Desire, and it's so deep, it's so full. I
Hmm.
mean, and then read something more modern and you think, yeah, you're just on the surface. You're not dropping in. You're not pulling it out. Um, but I'm not a critic of writing in the sense of, and indeed, that's one of the things I say to talk about things I say to actors is, yes, you need a backstory, you need a biography, but you're not writing an essay. It doesn't
Hmm.
have to be correct. It has to be what makes you want to do the play, what wants to put you in the action. Um, and there are a lot of things that would be completely irrelevant, like maybe where you went to school, primary school may not matter to you as the character in the situation. But if you were writing a, a biography for a text, maybe it would be important. But so yeah, I mean drama in all kinds of ways. Yeah, just well, it takes you in. It takes you in. It
Hmm.
compels you. Yeah.
That's very invitational. I had the chance this past semester to teach Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. It was the first Tennessee Williams play that I've worked into my teaching on.
Exactly. Yeah.
And digging into the characters and the things that are said and also not said and implied.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting work.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I'm going to ask you what's next and where people can find out more and things of that nature. But is there anything in the talk through that I've missed that you want to make sure to share in terms of writing and craft and anything that has impacted you that way?
Um, I mean, I guess the two things I would say about my books is the on on what you're going to show it, but I have it right here. I just happen to have it here on acting and life.
Mhm.
Um, I think it's of interest to anyone who's interested in the craft, whether they're interested in doing it or just watching it or thinking about it, but that it opens up a whole way of looking at what an actor does, which most people don't know. I mean, even I work with producers that don't know what we do as actors, and
Mhm.
we have to constantly uh, listen to them saying, "Can you make him more blah blah blah?" And we have to translate that into acting terms because that's not what we do. We don't make a character. It's not a piece of sculpture. Um, so that's of interest. What's ongoing is our video workshop. Um, and we could put up the links to that. But we're constantly now we've done 3 seasons of workshops with some students and professional actors on on the craft of acting, and we're putting up videos regularly on YouTube, and some of them are quite short and quite brief. Seems to be the way nowadays that we used to think we had to do 3 years of full-time training to become an actor or a skier or whatever. Now we do tips on YouTube, but they work. They're important. My wife has become a very accomplished boxer by tips from a boxer in Kazakhstan, which she has followed for several years. And so it's not so it's a fascinating way to explore what we do. And so that's in terms of what's next, I suppose the most ongoing thing that's happening right now.
I'll absolutely put the link up for that and uh, any web spaces, any online spaces, or in-person spaces that you'd like to mention where people can connect.
Well, I have my own website, williambdavis.com. So it's easy to remember. Uh, and there's a William B. Davis fan page on Facebook and what else? That's mainly what's there.
Yeah. One more compliment on the book, and it's on the design elements. I love the cover of On Acting and On Life, the sort of image of you in the background as this teacher figure with this actor, this person who's hunched down in front of you. There's a lot that that image says as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I greatly appreciate the time. And once more, if we've missed anything, just let me know and I'll be glad to edit it in and include
Yeah.
it. But it's been a delightful conversation with you.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Yeah.